The silence in the vast chamber was deafening as Captain He-Jin Park faced the Galactic Racing Federation Council. The 5 council members, each from different advanced species, towered over her from their elevated seats. Their expressions ranged from barely hidden amusement to open contempt. He-Jin stood straight, her black racing uniform bearing Earth's simple blue and white patch. Behind her, her crew of 4 maintained perfect posture despite the crushing weight of alien stares. Through the chamber's crystal walls, streams of ships passed by, each one a testament to technologies Earth could only dream of. "You expect us to allow this vessel to compete?" The lead counselor's translator barely masked the disgust in his tone. On the massive display behind them, the Terra Nova floated in its docking bay. Unlike the other racing ships with their sleek, almost artistic designs, the Terra Nova was plain. Its hull was sturdy, built for function over form, with visible weld lines and protective plating that made no attempt to hide its human origin. "Our ship meets all technical requirements," He-Jin replied calmly. She could feel Jae-ho Kim, her chief engineer, tense behind her. His hands were probably itching to defend their modifications, but he maintained his silence as planned. The council chamber's AI projected specifications of the Terra Nova: a fusion drive, not even antimatter. Another counselor leaned forward, multiple eyes blinking in sequence. "The last time we saw this technology in a race was, I don't believe we've ever seen it." "That's correct," He-Jin said. "We're the first." She didn't mention that they were the first because no one else would consider using such outdated technology in a modern race. The Luminae representative, her crystalline form catching the light, gestured at the specifications. "Your maximum acceleration is barely above primitive chemical propulsion. The heat shielding is practically medieval. Even your life support systems seem—" She paused, searching for a diplomatic word. "Basic." Behind He-Jin, Sun Li, their navigator, shifted slightly. They had all heard these criticisms before. Every step of their qualification trials had been met with the same dismissive attitudes. "Basic does not mean ineffective," He-Jin replied. She touched her wrist computer, and new images appeared. "Our fusion drive provides consistent thrust without quantum fluctuations. Our heat shields, while not crystal-based, have proven reliable in all conditions. As for life support," she allowed herself a small smile, "we find that redundancy has its advantages." The council members exchanged glances. The lead counselor leaned forward. "You understand this is not a local competition. You will face ships powered by quantum drives, equipped with AI navigation systems far beyond your computation capabilities. The Centaurians alone have won the last 3 championships. We understand completely." He-Jin's voice remained steady. "We also understand that according to your own rules, any civilization that can reach the qualification standards has the right to compete." A low murmur ran through the watching crowd. She had them there. The rules were clear, and humans had, against all expectations, met the minimum requirements. The council huddled in private discussion, their force field creating a shimmer around them. He-Jin felt Tadawon Choi, their systems officer, step closer. "They have to let us race," he whispered. "They can't break their own rules." When the force field dropped, the lead counselor looked resigned. "Your entry is accepted, though we advise against participation. The course this year includes the Maelstrom Nebula. Ships have been lost there, even with our most advanced shielding." He-Jin nodded, keeping her expression neutral. The nebula was exactly what they had been hoping for. Where quantum drives would struggle with the interference, their primitive fusion drive would power through reliably. "Thank you, Council." He-Jin bowed slightly. "We look forward to the race." As they walked back to their ship, passing by the sleek vessels of other competitors, Yu-Jin Kang, their medical officer, finally spoke. "Did you see their faces? They think we're going to our deaths." "Let them think that," He-Jin replied, watching a Luminae ship glide past, its crystal hull shimmering with internal light. They don't understand yet. Reaching the Terra Nova's dock, they paused to look at their ship. Its hull bore the scars of testing, of countless modifications and improvements. It wasn't beautiful by alien standards, but to them, it was perfect. "They're so focused on our fusion drive," Jai-Ho said, running his hand along the hull. "They haven't even asked about the modifications we made to the plasma containment system, or the enhanced maneuvering thrusters," Sun Mai added with a grin. "Or the backup systems for the backup systems," Tai-One chuckled. He-Jin looked at her crew, seeing the same determination in their eyes that had brought them this far. The aliens saw primitive technology, but they missed the human elements: innovation, adaptability, and the drive to succeed against impossible odds. "They think they've seen everything we can do," He-Jin said, watching the Earth insignia gleam under the dock's lights. "But they haven't seen anything yet." The crew boarded their ship, each heading to their stations with practiced efficiency. As He-Jin settled into the captain's chair, she smiled. Let the others mock their primitive ship. Soon enough, they would learn what humans could do with that primitive technology. The race was 3 days away. 3 days until they could show the galaxy that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Sometimes being primitive meant being unpredictable. And in racing, as in everything else, unpredictable could be the greatest advantage of all. The engine room of the Terra Nova hummed with the steady pulse of its fusion reactor. Ji-Ho Kim's fingers danced across the control panel, making tiny adjustments as readings flickered across multiple screens. The qualification course loomed ahead of them, a twisted path through an asteroid field that had already claimed 3 ships during previous attempts. Power output holding at 87%, Jai-Ho reported, his voice calm despite the beads of sweat on his forehead. "The containment field is stable." Sun Mei sat at the navigation station, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing their course. Red markers indicated the mandatory checkpoints they needed to hit. Between those points, they had freedom to choose their path. And Sun Mai had found one that no other ship had tried. "Course plotted through sectors 7 and 12, she announced. "It's tighter than the standard route, but our turning radius will handle it." From the captain's chair, He-Jin studied both their readings. Other ships, with their quantum drives, could achieve faster straight-line speeds, but those same drives needed more space to turn, their exotic physics requiring careful management during course changes. The Terra Nova's fusion drive was different. What it lacked in raw speed, it made up for in maneuverability. "Time to the first checkpoint?" He-Jin asked, watching as a crystalline Lumini ship blazed past them on the standard route. 7 minutes at current speed," Sun Mai replied. "We'll lose time on the straights, but make it up in the turns." Jai-Ho's hands never stopped moving, making micro-adjustments to power flow and containment strength. The fusion drive was his creation, built from Earth's outdated technology, but modified in ways that had shocked the inspection teams. They had expected a crude copy of standard fusion designs. What they got was something entirely new. Approaching first turn, Sun Mai called out, "Beginning maneuver in 3, 2, 1. The Terra Nova pivoted sharply, its hull groaning under the strain. Where other ships would have needed to take a wide arc, their fusion drive allowed them to turn almost in place. They shot through a gap between asteroids that the quantum drive ships couldn't risk. "Structure holding," reported Tai-One from his system station. "Hull integrity at 92%. From the medical station, Yu-Jin monitored the crew's vitals. G-forces within acceptable limits. Internal compensators are managing the stress." They emerged from the turn ahead of schedule, already lined up for the next checkpoint. On the main screen, they could see the Lumini ship far ahead, following the longer but safer route. "Next turn in 40 seconds, Sun Mai announced. "This one's even tighter." Jai-Ho's fingers flew across his controls, redirecting power to the starboard thrusters. Containment field is adjusting automatically. His modifications to the fusion drive weren't just about power. They were about control, about being able to redirect energy instantly to where it was needed. The second turn came faster than the first. The Terra Nova spun on its axis, plasma streams from its maneuvering thrusters painting bright lines against the darkness of space. They threaded through another gap in the asteroid field, rocks passing so close they could see the details of their cratered surfaces on the external cameras. Hull temperature rising, Ta-1 warned. Heat shields are handling it, but we're pushing the limits. Keep pushing, He-Jin ordered. We only get one shot at qualification. They emerged from the asteroid field into open space, racing toward the final checkpoint. The Lumini ship was still ahead, but the gap had closed significantly. Their shorter route had made up for their lower top speed. Final approach, Sunmei called out. We're going to cross paths with the Lumini ship at the checkpoint. He-Jin leaned forward in her chair. Time to show them what primitive technology can do. Ji-Ho, give us everything you can for the final turn. Ji-Ho's hands became a blur of motion. Redirecting emergency power reserves. Containment field at maximum strength. We can hold this for 20 seconds, Captain. The Terra Nova shot forward, its fusion drive glowing bright enough to cast shadows inside the ship. They approached the final turn at speeds that would have torn apart a less sturdy vessel. 10 seconds to turn. Sunmei counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The ship pivoted one final time, the forces enough to make their teeth rattle despite the internal compensators. They cut inside the Lumini ship's turn, their tighter radius allowing them to slip past just before the checkpoint. Checkpoint cleared. Sunmei shouted, real excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. We're qualified. Position 27. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Ji-Ho kept his focus on his controls, carefully managing the power-down sequence. Only when the fusion drive was purring at its normal levels did he allow himself to smile. Not bad for a primitive ship, he said quietly, patting his console. He-Jin looked at her crew with pride. They had done what everyone said was impossible. Qualified for the galaxy's most prestigious race using technology the others considered obsolete. But they had done more than that. They had shown that human ingenuity could compete with alien advancement. Well done, everyone, she said. But remember, qualification was the easy part. The real race is still to come. As they guided the Terra Nova back to its dock, other ships passed by, their crews now looking at the human vessel with new interest. They had expected the humans to fail, to prove that their technology was as primitive as it seemed. Instead, they had demonstrated something that worried the other races far more than any advanced technology could. They had shown that humans could innovate, could take the old and make it new, could find advantages where others saw only limitations. The race would be different, longer, and more challenging. But they had proven today that they belonged here among the stars. And they were just getting started. Tai-1 Choi stood patiently as the alien inspection team circled the Terra Nova for the third time. Their scanners hummed and beeped, each pass revealing something that made them shake their heads in disbelief. The lead inspector, a tall being with iridescent scales, kept tapping his device as if convinced it was malfunctioning. These heat shield readings cannot be accurate, the inspector said, mandibles clicking in frustration. The material composition is far too simple to achieve these results. Tai-1 watched them with carefully hidden amusement. The heat shields were simple. That was their genius. While other ships used exotic materials and energy fields, the Terra Nova's shields used layers of conventional materials arranged in an unconventional pattern. The readings are correct, Tai-1 said. Would you like to run the tests again? Nearby, Ji-Ho worked on the fusion drive, pretending not to listen. The engine modifications were his masterpiece, but the heat shields were Ta-1's contribution. They had spent months testing different combinations until they found the perfect arrangement. A second inspector, their body a shifting mass of translucent tentacles, moved closer to examine the hull plating. The thermal distribution pattern is unlike anything in our database. How are you achieving this with such basic materials? Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective, Ta-1 replied, reciting one of He-Jin's favorite phrases. The inspection team huddled together, discussing something in their native languages that their translators didn't catch. Tai-1 used the moment to check the shield diagnostics on his tablet. All systems were operating perfectly, just as they had in testing. "We need to inspect the interior shield layers," the lead inspector announced. "This level of performance from standard materials suggests hidden technology." Tai-1 nodded and opened the access panel. The inspectors crowded around, their scanning devices probing every layer of the shield structure. Their confusion only grew as each scan confirmed what they refused to believe. The shields were exactly what they appeared to be. "Look at their faces," Sun Mai whispered as she passed by, carrying navigation equipment. "They can't accept that we did this without quantum technology." The inspection continued for hours. They checked every connection, every layer, every seal. They compared the readings to their database of known technologies. Nothing matched, because nothing like this had been tried before. "Your heat shields," the lead inspector finally said. "They work by reflecting and redistributing heat through multiple layers, like a series of mirrors," Tai-1 explained. "Each layer catches what the previous layer misses, and the pattern spreads the heat across the entire shield instead of concentrating it in one area." The simplicity of it seemed to offend them. Their own ships used quantum fields to phase excess heat into another dimension. The idea that simple reflection and redistribution could be nearly as effective challenged everything they believed about technological progression. He-Jin appeared on the deck above, watching the inspection with interest. "Is everything satisfactory?" she called down. The lead inspector looked up at her, scales shifting colors in what might have been frustration. "The shields pass inspection," he admitted, "though we recommend upgrading to modern protection systems before the race. We're comfortable with our current configuration." He-Jin replied with a polite smile. As the inspection team moved on to examine other systems, Ta-1 ran his hand along the hull. The shields were just the beginning. Throughout the ship, they had taken primitive technology and found ways to make it work better than anyone thought possible. "They're so focused on what the shields are made of," he said to Jaiho. Through the main viewport, they could see the other ships powering up their quantum drives. Fields of exotic energy rippled around their hulls, distorting the space around them. In comparison, the Terra Nova's fusion drive glowed with a steady, simple light. "Navigation locked in," Sun Mai reported from her station. "First light plotted. The nebula's radiation is already affecting long-range sensors, but our backup systems are compensating." Tai-1's hands moved across his console, checking and double-checking every system. Hull integrity at 100%. Heat shields ready for maximum output. The race controller's voice echoed through all ships. "Final countdown begins in 30 seconds. All ships, confirm readiness." One by one, the other vessels signaled their confirmation. The Terra Nova was last, as always. He-Jin pressed the comm button. "Terra Nova, ready to proceed." She could almost hear the dismissive thoughts of the other crews. The human ship, with its primitive technology, was expected to fall behind in the first leg. None of them had bothered to ask why humans would enter a ship they knew couldn't match the straight-line speed of quantum drives. 10 seconds, the controller announced. Yu-Jin watched the crew's vitals spike with anticipation. "Everyone's heart rates are up, but within expected ranges," she reported. "Medical systems standing by." 5 seconds. The quantum drives ahead of them flared brighter, space itself seeming to bend around the leading ships. 3, 2, 1, begin. The race started with a flash of light as 31 quantum drives engaged at once. The advanced ships shot forward like arrows, quickly pulling ahead of the Terra Nova. Their fusion drive pushed them forward at what seemed like a leisurely pace in comparison. "Current position?" He-Jin asked calmly. "Still 32nd, Yu-Jin confirmed. "Distance to nearest competitor increasing." Their quantum drives are performing at peak efficiency. She paused, checking another reading. For now. The first leg of the race was a straight shot toward the nebula. The Terra Nova fell further and further behind, exactly as everyone had expected. In the distance, the Maelstrom Nebula grew larger. Its purple clouds shot through with bolts of radiation. First ships entering the nebula's outer field, Sunmai reported. Impact in 3, 2, 1. Ahead of them, the effects were immediate. The quantum drives began to flicker and stutter as radiation interfered with their exotic physics. Several ships visibly slowed, their crews frantically adjusting their systems. Radiation levels rising, Ta-1 announced. Our shields are holding steady. No impact on drive performance. He-Jin leaned forward. Now we show them why simple is sometimes better. Jeho, give us full power. The fusion drive roared to life, its steady thrust pushing them forward reliably. Unaffected by the radiation that was crippling the more advanced ships, they began passing the struggling vessels one by one. Position 25, Yu-Jin called out. 23, 20, 18. The nebula's full effect became apparent as they drew closer. Quantum drives weren't meant to operate in such conditions. Their advanced technology, so superior in normal space, became a liability in the radiation storm. Position 12, Yu-Jin announced. The crews ahead are showing extreme stress readings. Their radiation shields are failing. The Terra Nova pushed forward, its primitive technology performing exactly as designed. The fusion drive's steady power never wavered, the simple radiation shields doing their job without the complexity of quantum fields. Position 7. Yu-Jin's voice held a note of triumph. 6, 5. They entered the nebula proper, purple light flooding the bridge. Where other ships struggled and faltered, the Terra Nova drove on. Sometimes, He-Jin reflected, the old ways were the best ways. Position 3, Yu-Jin reported. 2 ships still ahead, both showing critical system failures. He-Jin allowed herself a small smile. Perfect. They never saw us coming. She looked ahead into the heart of the nebula, where the real challenge waited. Now let's show them what else this primitive ship can do. The Terra Nova pressed deeper into the maelstrom, its simple systems carrying it where advanced technology feared to tread. They had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength, and the race was just beginning. Deep within the Maelstrom Nebula, the Terra Nova forged ahead while chaos erupted around them. The purple clouds of radiation swirled past their viewports, occasionally split by massive energy discharges that would have crippled more advanced ships. Jeho's hands moved steadily across his engineering console, making minor adjustments to keep their fusion drive running smooth and strong. Lumini flagship losing power, Sunmai reported, watching their sensors track the struggling ships around them. Their quantum drive just went into emergency shutdown. 2 more crystalline ships showing critical system failures. Through the main viewport, they could see the sleek forms of the Lumini vessels, their once proud crystal hulls now dark and lifeless. Emergency beacons pulsed weakly through the radiation storm, marking where the advanced ships had been forced to stop. Conventional thrusters holding steady, Jeho announced with quiet pride. Fusion core temperature stable. Backup systems all green. He patted his console affectionately. Nothing fancy to fail out here. He-Jin watched as another quantum dry ship ahead of them started to drift. Their advanced systems, so powerful in normal space, couldn't handle the nebula's interference. But the Terra Nova's simple technology kept working, unaffected by the storm around them. Position update, He-Jin asked, keeping her voice calm despite the excitement building in her chest. Yu-Jin checked her readings. We're in second place now. Only the Centaurian champion ahead of us, and their readings show increasing system strain. The Terra Nova pushed forward through another wave of radiation. Their heat shields, built from simple materials arranged in clever ways, handled the energy without complaint. Ahead, the Centaurian ship's quantum fields flickered and sparked as they tried to maintain stability. Hull temperature rising, Ta-1 reported. But the cooling systems are managing it. Primary and backup systems still responding normally. He paused, checking another reading. The same can't be said for our friend up front. The Centaurian ship was visibly struggling now. Its quantum drive produced bursts of uneven power as the radiation interfered with its exotic physics. They were still ahead, but their lead was shrinking with every passing moment. Their life support is starting to fail, Yu-Jin noted, concern in her voice. Their crew's vital signs are becoming erratic. He-Jin made a quick decision. Open a channel to their ship. The communication system crackled with static before clearing. Centaurian vessel, this is Terra Nova. Your systems are failing. Power down before you lose life support completely. The response came back garbled but defiant. We will not surrender to a primitive vessel. Their pride will get them killed. Sunmi muttered, watching the Centaurian ship's erratic movement. Their quantum drive is reaching critical levels, Jaiho warned. If it destabilizes. Before he could finish, a bright flash lit up the nebula. The Centaurian ship's quantum drive had finally failed, the exotic energies dispersing harmlessly into space. The ship itself drifted to a stop, emergency power barely maintaining basic life support. All ships. He-Jin broadcast on the emergency channel. Centaurian vessel needs immediate assistance. Rescue ships are moving in, Yu-Jin confirmed. Their crew's vital signs are stabilizing on emergency systems. She smiled slightly. Sometimes primitive backup systems save lives. The Terra Nova continued forward, now alone at the front of the race. Their fusion drive hummed steadily, pushing them through the heart of the nebula, while rescue ships collected their stranded competitors. Engineering status. He-Jin asked, knowing that overconfidence now could still cost them everything. All systems nominal, Jaiho reported with satisfaction. The fusion drive hasn't even noticed the radiation. Backup systems standing by, but we haven't needed them yet. Ta-1 looked up from his station. You know what's funny? We spent so much time making our simple systems work better, we never considered that they might be the perfect solution all along. He-Jin nodded. The other races had pushed forward with ever more advanced technology, making their ships more powerful, but also more vulnerable. Humans, working with what they had created something resistant to the very conditions that defeated quantum drives and crystal ships. Course ahead is clear, Sunmi announced. No other ships registering on sensors. We have a clear run to the finish line. The Terra Nova pushed on through the nebula, its primitive systems carrying it safely through conditions that had defeated the most advanced ships in the galaxy. Behind them, the rescue operations continued, collecting the stranded crews who had trusted too much in their advanced technology. Approaching nebula exit point, Sunmi reported. Clear space ahead. We'll be the first ship to emerge. He-Jin looked at her crew, seeing the pride in their faces. They had done more than just take the lead. They had proven that sometimes the old ways, the simple ways, were the best ways. Take us home, she ordered softly. The Terra Nova's fusion drive glowed steadily as they pushed toward clear space, leaving the Maelstrom Nebula behind. They had entered the race as underdogs, mocked for their primitive technology. They would finish it as champions, having proven that understanding your technology, no matter how basic it seemed, was more important than having the most advanced systems in the galaxy. The race wasn't over yet, but they had overcome the greatest challenge. The simple ship, the primitive vessel, had survived where advanced technology had failed. Sometimes, in the end, simpler was indeed better. The Terra Nova burst from the Maelstrom Nebula's purple clouds into clear space, its fusion drive glowing with steady power. Behind them, the nebula churned with radiation that had claimed so many advanced ships. Ahead lay the final stretch, a straight run to the finish line where two ships somehow still led them. Confirmed visual on leaders, Sunmi announced, her hands dancing across the navigation controls. Centaurian backup vessel and Illumine scout. They must have skipped the nebula entirely. Taking the long way around cost them time, He-Jin observed, studying their positions on the main display. But they're still ahead. Jai-Ho's voice came up from engineering, tight with concentration. Fusion drive operating at peak efficiency. We can push it harder if needed. The two leading ships were clearly visible now, their exotic drives creating distortions in space as they raced toward the finish. They had avoided the nebula by taking a longer route, sacrificing distance for safety. It had seemed like a smart strategy. Until now. Their quantum drives are still affected, Taiwan reported, watching his system readings. The nebula's radiation field extends further than they expected. They're running at reduced power. He-Jin leaned forward in her chair. How reduced? 60% efficiency and dropping, Taiwan confirmed. The radiation trail we're carrying out of the nebula is interfering with their quantum fields. A smile spread across He-Jin's face. They won't want to move away from us. That would mean taking an even longer route. She keyed the ship-wide comm. All hands, prepare for maximum acceleration. Jai-Ho, give us everything the drive has left. Fusion drive responding. Jai-Ho called back. Power output increasing to maximum safe levels. The Terra Nova surged forward, its primitive drive unaffected by the radiation they carried with them like a wake. The quantum-powered ships ahead began to show signs of struggle, their once smooth flight becoming erratic. Centaurian ship is losing stability, Sunmai reported. Their quantum field is fluctuating, distance dropping rapidly. He-Jin monitored the crew's vital signs as the G-forces increased. All crew holding steady. Their crews are showing extreme stress. Their compensation systems must be affected too. The Terra Nova closed the gap meter by meter. Their fusion drive, considered hopelessly obsolete by galactic standards, pushed them forward with relentless consistency while the advanced ships fought against the spreading radiation. Passing Centaurian vessel, Sun Mai announced with barely contained excitement. One more to go. The Luminae scout ahead tried to compensate, its crystalline hull pulsing with energy as it pushed its quantum drive harder. But the radiation field followed the Terra Nova like a weapon, disrupting the delicate physics their advanced technology relied on. Their quantum drive is redlining, Taiwan warned. If they don't reduce power. A burst of light flared ahead as the Luminae ship's quantum drive automatically shut down to prevent catastrophic failure. The sleek vessel's momentum carried it forward, but without power, they could only watch as the Terra Nova approached. Taking the lead, Sunmai confirmed. 2 kilometers to finish line. He-Jin watched the distance count down. Now they understand, she whispered. The old ways still have power. The fusion drive's steady roar filled the ship as they passed the struggling Luminae vessel. What the advanced races had seen as primitive, as obsolete, had proven to be their greatest strength. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best solution. 1 kilometer, Sunmai called out. 0.5. 0.2. The finish line flashed beneath them, sensors confirming their victory. The bridge erupted in cheers as the Terra Nova crossed first, its primitive technology having overcome the most advanced ships in the galaxy. All systems performing perfectly, Jai-Ho reported, pride evident in his voice. The fusion drive never even noticed the radiation. He-Jin opened a channel to the race control station. Terra Nova crossing finish line, requesting confirmation. The response came back quickly, confusion evident in the controller's voice. Terra Nova, victory confirmed, though we're still trying to understand how. Simple, He-Jin replied. We used technology we understood instead of technology we merely possessed. She looked at her crew, seeing the same pride in their faces. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. As they powered down their systems, they could see the rescue ships still retrieving vessels from the nebula. The advanced ships, for all their quantum drives and exotic technology, had been defeated by conditions their complex systems couldn't handle. Engineering beginning cool-down sequence, Jai-Ho reported. The fusion drive performed exactly as designed. The Terra Nova's victory would change how the galaxy viewed primitive technology. They had proven that understanding your tools, no matter how simple they seemed, was more important than having the most advanced systems available. "Well done, everyone," He-Jin said quietly. "We showed them that humanity's way has value. That sometimes simpler is better." The fusion drive's glow began to fade as they prepared to dock, its steady power having carried them where quantum drives could not go. They had entered the race as a curiosity, a primitive vessel among advanced ships. They would dock as champions, having proven that the old ways still had power. The Terra Nova hung in space near the finish line, its hull still glowing red from the final burn. For a long moment, silence filled every communication channel as the galaxy tried to process what they had just witnessed. A human ship, powered by primitive fusion drive, had defeated the most advanced vessels in the greatest race ever held. He-Jin stood before her crew on the bridge, waiting for the official confirmation. The main display showed dozens of ships limping out of the nebula, their quantum drives damaged or disabled. Their own fusion drive hummed quietly, cooling down after its victory run. "Incoming transmission from race control," He-Jin announced. "All channels." The race controller's voice filled the bridge, still carrying traces of disbelief. "After verification of course data and compliance checks, we confirm Terra Nova as victor of the Galactic Racing Championship." The silence broke. Cheers erupted across communication channels, not just from Earth's observation posts, but from dozens of worlds. Species that had dismissed human technology as primitive were now celebrating their victory. Engineering reports coming in from multiple races, Jiho said, reading from his console. "They want to know how our fusion drive handled the nebula's radiation." Taiwan laughed softly. "Should we tell them it's because we kept things simple?" Messages flooded in from across the galaxy. Many came from smaller worlds, younger spacefaring races who had believed they needed quantum technology to compete. The Terra Nova had shown them another way. Incoming request from the Racing Federation Council. Sunmai reported. "They want us to dock for the victory ceremony." He-Jin nodded. "Take us in, nice and steady. Let's show them our primitive technology can dock just as smoothly as their quantum drives." The Terra Nova moved gracefully toward the massive Federation station. Ships of all designs lined their approach, crews visible in viewing ports as they watched the human vessel pass. The mocking looks were gone, replaced by respect and curiosity. Multiple scanning attempts detected. Taiwan reported with a smile. "Everyone wants to know our secrets." "The secret is there is no secret," Jiho replied. "We just understood our technology instead of relying on advanced systems we barely comprehended." The docking procedure went perfectly, the Terra Nova's conventional thrusters placing them exactly where they needed to be. As the airlocks engaged, He-Jin gathered her crew for a final word. "Before we go out there," she said softly, "remember this. We didn't win because we had better technology. We won because we understood what we had and made it work better than anyone thought possible." The Federation Council chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of worlds. As He-Jin and her crew entered, the room fell silent. The same council members who had mocked their entry now stood to greet them. The lead counselor stepped forward, holding the championship trophy, a crystal sphere containing a miniature galaxy. "Captain Park," he said formally, "you and your crew have demonstrated something remarkable today. Not just victory, but a fundamental truth we had forgotten." He-Jin accepted the trophy, its weight solid in her hands. "What truth is that, counselor?" "That advancement does not always mean complexity. That understanding is more valuable than sophistication." He gestured to the gathered representatives. "Many worlds here believe they could not compete without quantum technology. You have shown them another way." Celebration parties erupted across the station. Species that had never interacted with humans now sought out the Terra Nova's crew, eager to learn from the race that had achieved so much with primitive technology. Engineering delegations from 12 worlds, Jiho reported, reading messages on his tablet. all wanting to study fusion drive applications. Navigation requests from 20 more. Sun Mai added. They're particularly interested in our radiation shielding design. Hejin watched her crew interact with the alien representatives, sharing knowledge and experience freely. They had done more than win a race. They had changed how the galaxy viewed technological progress. The trophy would return to Earth, but their victory's impact would spread across the stars. Future races would see more ships using simpler, better understood technology. The quantum drive wouldn't disappear, but it would no longer be seen as the only path forward. Message from Earth Command, Yu Jin said, handing He Jin a tablet. They're calling it the beginning of a new era in human-alien relations. He Jin smiled, watching alien engineers examine the Terra Nova through the station's windows. They're right, but not because we won. Because we showed them that humanity's way has value. The celebration continued as more ships arrived at the station. The Terra Nova's victory had shown the galaxy that sometimes the old ways still had power, that understanding was more valuable than advancement, and that human innovation could compete with any technology in the stars. As He-Jin looked out at the gathered ships, she knew this was just the beginning. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not by copying advanced technology, but by perfecting what they already had. The future would be built not on quantum drives and exotic physics, but on understanding, innovation, and the simple truth that sometimes primitive was perfect.